Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Vijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Vijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Prabhupada 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 Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jayam Vishnuhad Paramahamsa Parivakacharya Stadara Sadashi Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnavin Ki ISKCON Founder Acharya His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhana Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Dham Ki Ganga Maya ki, Yamuna Maya ki, Tulsi Devi ki, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki, Harinam Sankirtan ki, Priyamadanga Book Distribution ki, Transcendental Prashadam Distribution ki, New Govardhana ki, Gaur Premanande, Hare Hare Bol. All glories to Sama devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sama devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sama devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shishi Gun, Shi Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna, thank you everyone for coming to Srimad Bhagavatam class. Srila Prabhupada's wonderful Srimad Bhagavatam. So, is it text 20? I can't quite see the board. Text 20? That's yesterday's verse, so you have to read off your phones. Today's 20 and 21. So, reading from Srimad Bhagavatam? 22. Okay. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 23, entitled Devahuti's Lamentation, Text 20. Hamsa paravata vratais tatra tatra nikujitam kritiman manyamanai svan adiruya cha Hamsa paravata vraitais tatra tatra nikujitam kritiman manyamanai svan adiruya cha Hamsa paravata vraitais tatra tatra nikujitam kritiman manyamanai svan adiruya cha Anyone else? So, word for word. Hamsa of swans. Paravata of pigeons. Vratai with multitudes. Tatra tatra here and there. Nikujitam vibrated. Kritriman artificial. Manyamanai, thinking. San, belonging to their own kind. Adiruya, adiruya, rising repeatedly. Cha, and. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Yeah. Here and there, in that palace, were multitudes of live swans and pigeons, as well as artificial swans and pigeons, so lifelike that the real swans rose above them again and again, thinking them live birds like themselves. Thus the palace vibrated with the sounds of these birds. Please repeat. Here and there, in that palace, were multitudes of live swans and pigeons, as well as artificial swans and pigeons, so lifelike that the real swans rose above them again and again, thinking them live birds like themselves. Thus the palace vibrated with the sounds of these birds. Text 21. Viharastana vishrama samvesha prangana jirai vitopajo samrachitai vishmapanam ivatmana. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. Yeah. The castle had pleasure grounds, resting chambers, bedrooms, and inner and outer yards designed with an eye to comfort. All this caused astonishment to the sage himself. Purport. Kadama Muni, being a saintly person, was living in a humble hermitage. But when he saw the palace constructed by his yogic powers, which was full of resting rooms, rooms for sex enjoyment, and inner and outer yards, he himself was astonished. That is the way of a God-gifted person. A devotee like Kadama Muni exhibited such opulence by his yogic power at the request of his wife. But when the opulence was produced, he himself could not understand how such manifestations could be possible. When a yogi's power is exhibited, the yogi himself is sometimes astonished. Translation. The castle had pleasure grounds, resting chambers, bedrooms, and inner and outer yards designed with an eye to comfort. All this caused astonishment to the sage himself. Om Jnana Jnandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshumratam Jena Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Nassa Presho Bhadresho Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavat Yut Masloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki. So, Hare Krishna, thank you everyone for coming today. Please forgive me, I haven't been here so much the last few days. Grihastha life is always making compromises. Tamakrish Maharaj said, find that Grihastha whose middle name is not compromise. Yesterday I had to take my daughter all the way to Coffs Harbour for a choir musical performance. Stayed down there all day and I didn't get to bed till midnight. So, Hare Krishna. So, very nice description here of Kadama Muni's wonderful palace, aerial mansion, aerial palace. Wonderful descriptions here. The last few verses describes the palace. We can just read back again to remind ourselves of the wonderful palace in the sky. It was a wonderful structure bedecked with all sorts of jewels, adorned with pillars of precious stones, and capable of yielding whatever one desired. It was equipped with every form of furniture and wealth, which tended to increase in the course of time. The castle was fully equipped with all necessary paraphernalia, and it was pleasing in all seasons, It was decorated all around with flags, festoons and artistic work of variegated colours. It was further embellished with wreaths of charming flowers that attracted sweetly humming bees, and with tapestries of linen, silk and various other fabrics. The palace looked charming with beds, couches, fans and seats, all separately arranged in 7 stories. Its beauty was enhanced by artistic engravings here and there on the walls. The floor was of emerald with coral daces. Does anyone know how you pronounce that? Is it diocese or diocese? What is a dais? Sitting place, right? The palace was very beautiful, with its coral thresholds at the entrances and its doors bedecked with diamonds. Gold pinnacles crowned its domes of sapphire. With the choicest rubies set in its diamond walls, it appears as though possessed of eyes. It was furnished with wonderful canopies and greatly valuable gates of gold. Here and there in that palace were multitudes of live swans and pigeons, as well as artificial swans and pigeons so lifelike that the real swans rose above them again and again, thinking them live birds like themselves. Thus the palace vibrated with the sounds of these birds. The castle had pleasure grounds, resting chambers, bedrooms and inner and outer yards designed with an eye to comfort. All this caused astonishment to the sage himself. So it's interesting that Prabhupada says Kadamba Muni, even though he can know by his own mystic powers, he constructed, he produced this wonderful aerial mansion, which was full of these wonderful qualities, and was 7 stories. 7 stories high and very, very huge, like a small city, Prabhupada says. But Srila Prabhupada said even he himself was astonished. That is the way of a God-gifted person. So yogis have these different powers to become smaller than the smallest, larger than the largest, lighter than the lightest, to control other people's minds completely, to produce another planet, and to produce such amazing things as this description, this wonderful aerial mansion. But these are all material achievements, Srila Prabhupada would teach us. The greatest yogi is the bhakti yogi, the devotee of the Lord, who's engaged constantly in hearing, chanting and glorifying Krishna. So this is the topmost yoga out of all the different yoga systems. And ultimately Kadamba Muni was not just a very powerful yogi with many mystic cities, but he was also a great pure devotee of the Lord. So all through his life he was constantly engaged in Krishna conscious service, Krishna conscious activities, even in his household life, even with such opulence. And we can understand that he himself was astonished because he was understanding that this was not his own doing. This was only by the grace of Krishna that he was able to exhibit these mystic powers. So we can understand that when he produced such a wonderful palace, he was always thinking, this is by Krishna's mercy that this has come about. And Srila Prabhupada describes in previous purports that if the wife is very chaste to the husband, very chaste and just engages in helping him, assisting him in his service, especially if he's a devotee of the Lord, then all good fortune is there for such a chaste wife. And so we can see here that Devahuti, even though they were living in a simple hut, and she was so devoted to her husband to the point where she neglected her own health and practically forgot to eat, and and she wasn't looking after her, her dress or her hair became very matted. Because she was just so much devoted to her pure devotee husband, Kadama Muni, and engaging and assisting him in all ways in his devotional service to Krishna. But she received such great fortune, not just that she was able to live in such a glorious, opulent, aerial mansion in the sky, but she receives many beautiful daughters, 9 beautiful daughters, and Prabhupada describes that Kadama Muni, by his mystic powers, he expanded himself into 9 forms so that he could produce 9 daughters through sexual enjoyment, 9 daughters at once, at the same time. So she received 9 beautiful daughters, and ultimately she achieved the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Kapila Muni, as her own son. And she achieved the great fortune of pure Krishna consciousness, attaining pure love for God. So Prabhupada teaches that such is the good fortune of a very chaste wife if she just very diligently and with all seriousness and devotion sticks with her husband and serves him in a very faithful way. All good fortune is assured in her future life. Not just future, but present and future as well. And Srila Prabhupada describes in one of his purports that a chaste wife should never even offer any unkind words, like heated words, unkind words to her husband. Prabhupada says that ordinarily in the material world, a man, he goes out to work and he meets with so many difficulties dealing with so many people. So when he comes home, he should be greeted with nice, sweet words from his wife, and with that she should serve him in very loving way, in very loving ways. In that way, the man's mind and heart is very pacified, and he thinks very favorably of his wife. In that way, the relationship can be very Krishna conscious, very sweet, very loving, and the husband and wife can assist each other in their household duties and ultimately in their Krishna consciousness practice. So just as Kadama Muni was amazed and astonished how he was living in a little hut with his wife, they were living very simply. And by his mystic power, which was given by Krishna, this wonderful palace was produced. He was completely amazed. So this is the quality of a devotee. As we recite this verse sometimes, Mukam karoti vachalam bhangam langa te garim yat kripatam aham vandeshu gurum dina taranam. That by the mercy of Krishna and a pure devotee, even a blind man can see stars in the sky, a lame man can cross great mountains, and a dumb man can recite eloquent poetry. So before coming to Krishna consciousness, we're all blind and lame and dumb to the understanding of our eternal relationship with Krishna. We have no understanding whatsoever, especially in Kali Yuga. Kalo doshen idherajan aste hekan mahadgana kirtanadeva Krishna sha mukta sangha paramvijit. This age of Kali is an ocean of faults, an ocean of problems, where practically 99% of the population couldn't be any further away from Krishna consciousness if they tried. And there's so many anomalies, crime, war, natural disturbances, floods, droughts, and so many sinful activities. Constantly people are immersed their whole lives in intoxication, meat eating, gambling, illicit sex, which is completely covering their understanding of their eternal position as a loving servant of Krishna. But by taking to Krishna consciousness, as Srila Prabhupada said, my disciples previously, they were drug-addicted, meat-eating, sex-mongering hippies. Now they're looking like they're beautiful devotees from Vaikuntha and Goloka, beautifully dressed in dhotis and saris and with tilak and kuntimala and japamala, and smiling from ear to ear and fully engaged in Krishna's service. This is the change by adopting Krishna consciousness. And we see many devotees exhibiting wonderful, amazing achievements in their service to Krishna. And we can understand that they've been blessed by Krishna and the spiritual master with the great yogic siddhis to perform these amazing services. Like we see many devotees like constantly dressing deities in beautiful dresses and ornaments and flower garlands, and we may be constantly amazed at how the devotees are empowered to dress the deities so wonderfully, and constantly, year after year, or cook so many wonderful offerings, or maintain Krishna's beautiful temples, or make so many devotees, attract so many people to Krishna consciousness, and put on wonderful festivals, like we see devotees put on so many big festivals, Rath Yatras, Janmashtami, Gopanim. So this is because they've been empowered by these transcendental yogic powers to serve Krishna in many wonderful ways. Even Srila Prabhupada said about his own books, these are not my books, they're Krishna's books. Krishna spoke through me, told me, first right. And Prabhupada again and again would, the devotees like Shruti Kirti Prabhu, Harisari Prabhu, they tell us that Prabhupada would be quite often reading his own books, and he was amazed by the philosophy and the pastimes of Krishna with his pure devotees. Because Prabhupada would say, these are Krishna's books. And we see Srila Prabhupada, one old man, he was 70 years old, he came to the West. Of course, he's a Nitya Siddha, pure devotee of the Lord. Wasn't forced to come down to this material world, but Krishna personally said, I want you to go and write these transcendental books and spread Krishna consciousness all around the world. And Prabhupada said he didn't want to go, but Krishna pressured him to go. No, I want you to go and do this service. So Prabhupada, very elevated soul, but on the material platform one may think, he's just an old man, 70 years old. He's coming to the West at the fag end of his life. What can he achieve? But we see that he was totally empowered with great transcendental ability and transcendental mystic power to spread Krishna consciousness all around the world, just in 10 years, basically just 10 years, 12 years. He initiated like 5,000 or 10,000 disciples, opened 108 temples all around the world, was responsible for distributing millions of books and opening many farms and restaurants and inspiring, thousands and thousands of people to take up Krishna consciousness. And by the spreading of Krishna consciousness, contacted millions of people got the benefit of this Krishna consciousness movement. Just one person. Like Prabhupada said, one moon in the sky can light up the whole sky, but what can thousands of twinkling stars, like the Mayavadis, they're compared to like twinkling stars. What can they do to benefit the whole world? And even we hear that Krishna himself, once he saw himself in a mirror, and Krishna was amazed at his own beauty. So there's a story, maybe devotees heard this story many times. Who's heard the story of the Brahma and the cobbler? So some devotees haven't heard still. So we can tell So to exemplify, a devotee's full faith in the power of the Supreme Lord. So there was once a Brahmana. He was very proud of his Brahminical qualities and activities, and there was a cobbler. He was just making boots with leather. And Narada Muni was preaching all around the three worlds, and he came across these two personalities on this earthly planet. And he approached the Brahmana, and the Brahmana was wanted to ask Narada Muni, I hear that you go in and out of the material and spiritual worlds. When you go to the spiritual world to see Lord Narayan, Lord Krishna, can you ask him when I will get liberated, when I'll come back to the spiritual world? So Narada Muni said, yes, I can do that. And then Narada Muni came across this cobbler, and the cobbler was asked the same question. I hear you're going to see Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna in the spiritual world. Can you please ask him when I will get liberated? So Narada Muni said, yes, I can do that. And he went to the spiritual world, and he came into the association of Lord Krishna. And Lord Krishna is asking him, so how's your preaching all throughout the material and spiritual worlds? You're a very dear devotee of mine, and please tell me of some of your latest preaching experiences. So Narada Muni told about the Brahmana and the cobbler. He said there was a Brahmana, and he was asking when he'll come to the spiritual world. And he also wanted to know what you're doing at this particular time in the spiritual world. So the Lord said, well, you can tell him that I was busy putting an elephant through an eye of a needle. And Narada Muni said, yes, I will tell him that. And there was also a cobbler. He wanted to know the same thing, what you're doing when he will come back to the spiritual world. So the Lord said the same thing, that I'm putting an elephant through an eye of a needle. And that's right, he also said that you can tell the Brahmana that he won't come back to the spiritual world for millions of lifetimes. Narada Muni was very astonished. Seems like a very paka Brahmana. How can this be? And the Lord said to Narada Muni also that the cobbler, he will come back at the end of this life. And Narada Muni was also astonished because the cobbler, he was thinking, the cobbler is just a low-class person, Sudra, engaged in a low-class profession. So Narada Muni came back to the material world, and he met up with the Brahmana, and the Brahmana said, so what's the good news? When will I go back to the spiritual world? And Narada Muni said, well, no, the Lord unfortunately said, no, you won't be coming back for millions of lifetimes. And the Brahmana said, well, this is ridiculous. I'm such a saintly person. I know all the scriptures. I'm so pious. And anyway, what was the Lord doing? Narada Muni said, well, I don't know if you'll believe this, but he was putting an elephant through an eye of a needle. And the Brahmana said, that's ridiculous. No one can do such a thing. That's impossible. And Narada Muni said, well, take it or leave it. And he went and he found the cobbler, and the cobbler asked the same question, so what was the news? And Narada Muni said, the Lord said, you will come back at the end of this life. And the cobbler said, oh, that's amazing. I don't know if I can believe that. The Lord is so kind and merciful. I'm such a low-class person. And what was the Lord doing? Well, he was putting an elephant through an eye of a needle. And the cobbler said, well, that's amazing. No, the Lord, he can do anything he likes. Why can't he do that? And he didn't just have blind faith, but he gave an example. He said there's this huge banyan tree, like a fig tree, and there's many, many thousands of fruits on the fig tree. And each of those figs is many thousands of seeds. And every one of those seeds has the potency to produce another huge fig tree. So he said if the Lord can invest the potency in each of those seeds to produce another huge banyan tree or a fig tree, then why can't he put an elephant through an eye of a needle? So the materialistic person, he may achieve great achievements, may become very famous or very wealthy, or achieve so much material opulence, or even may be a great yogi and have these great yogic powers, but he's never astonished or amazed because he's thinking it's by his own prowess. Whereas the devotee, anything that wonderful that happens in his life, is always thinking, this is always by the mercy of Guru and Gauranga, by the Lord and my spiritual master. Without their grace, I have no power to do anything. Like Srila Prabhupada said, his only good qualification was that he followed the instruction of his spiritual master to preach Krishna consciousness in the West. He took this to heart. He considered this his only good qualification. Of course, he has so many wonderful qualifications, but Prabhupada was very humble and considering it was all by the mercy of his spiritual master. And that just he followed the instruction of his spiritual master, and the whole Krishna consciousness movement came about. So the Srimad Bhagavatam deals with so many different subject matters, and ultimately it's non-different from Krishna himself. It's the literary incarnation of Krishna. So we're directly getting association of Krishna and all these pure devotees and all these wonderful pastimes and the process of devotional service in which we can become a pure devotee ourselves, perfect our life, and be fully engaged in Krishna's service and get out of this temporary, miserable world, this material world, where there's so much forgetfulness of Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam is the solution to all problems of life. Once Srila Prabhupada was asking in Australia the devotees, the book distributors, like, what do you say when you go out distributing their Srimad Bhagavatams on the street? And one devotee, Gopinath Acharya Prabhu, used to be here, he's passed away now, he said, Prabhupada, we say it's about yoga, meditation. Prabhupada said you should say that these books give solutions to all the problems of the material world. And they give answers to all our questions. So everything we need to perfect our life, be fully Krishna conscious and be fully engaged in Krishna's service and achieve all the good qualities of a pure devotee and the opportunity to go back to the spiritual world for our eternal position of eternal life full of knowledge and bliss is offered in the pages of these transcendental literatures. As Prabhupada quotes in the front of every Srimad Bhagavatam, he quotes this verse, Tadvag Vishogo Janataga Viplavo Yasmin Pratishlokam Abhadyavatyapi. On the other hand, that literature which is full of description of the name, form, fame and pastimes of the unlimited Supreme Lord is a transcendental literature meant for bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. And such literatures are heard, sung and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. So this Krishna consciousness movement is meant to save this world, this darkened world in Kali Yuga, which is heading for, destruction. It's meant to save this world in its darkest hour. We say every morning, Srila Prabhupada, Saviour of the whole world. So Srila Prabhupada has given this process, this movement, this Krishna consciousness movement, these transcendental literatures, which anyone, even the most sinful jagais and madais of this world, can save anyone and bring them to the platform of pure devotional service. It's not just dry theory, but it's practically experienced. As the Bhagavatam in the 11th canto states, Bhakti Parishna Bhavo Virakti Anyatra Chaisha Trika Eka Kala, that devotion to Krishna, transcendental knowledge of one's relationship with Krishna, and detachment from the material world, these things come automatically with every step we take in devotional service. And the verse gives the example, tushti pushti shud apayona gasham. Just like when you eat a nice meal, when you're hungry, nice meal of prasadam, you feel nourishment, freedom from hunger, and you feel your senses completely satisfied and enlivened. So it's automatically, if we follow this process, we will achieve the complete perfection of life, full Krishna consciousness, and ultimately the supreme destination. On the other hand, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 16th chapter, the divine and demoniac natures, he's talking about the demoniac natures. Yashastra vidimuchusha vadite kamakarata. He discards the scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own whims, attains neither perfection nor happiness nor the supreme destination. But if we follow Krishna consciousness, then we achieve the perfection of life, full happiness. We can be happy 24 hours a day in Krishna's service, and the supreme destination. And as Srila Prabhupada would say, the supreme destination is not just going back to Godhead, but becoming a fully Krishna conscious, liberated soul, even in this material world. That's as good as going back to the spiritual world. These temples are replicas of Goloka and Vaikuntha, because Goloka Dham, Vaikuntha Dham has descended to this Krishna consciousness movement. Goloka Premadana Harinama Sangatana. That from the spiritual world, from Goloka, the topmost planet in the spiritual world, has descended the chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we can be totally free from attraction to the material world and freed from the influence of the modes of ignorance, passion, and even goodness, and be situated in transcendental goodness by taking shelter of these transcendental temples in the process of Krishna consciousness. Especially hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam, chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, associating with devotees, living in a holy place, and worshipping the deities, these 5 most powerful items of devotional service. One can come to the platform where we're Krishna conscious 24 hours a day, and that is the goal, to always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. We should practice so that we come to that platform where every minute we're thinking how to serve Krishna, how to remember Krishna, how to spread Krishna's glories all around the world. And as Sri Adikiri Prabhu was saying in one of his talks I was listening to, that he was saying, how can we get Krishna ourselves if we don't give Krishna to others? This is a movement of compassion. The greatest quality of Krishna and his pure devotees in this material world is their quality of compassion on the fallen conditioned souls. So how can we become Krishna conscious? How can we receive the mercy of Krishna and his pure devotees like Srila Prabhupada unless we make an attempt to spread this Krishna consciousness movement, increase the family of devotees? Just as at the horse races, if you win the trifecta, you win a lot of money. So the trifecta of this Krishna consciousness movement is spreading the Krishna consciousness movement through book distribution, prasadam distribution, Harinam Sankirtan, contacting many, many thousands of people out there who would never come to a temple, who would never come and hear the Srimad Bhagavatam, but they receive wonderful mercy if the devotees just go out in the street. Just like Sri Adikiri Prabhu was also saying, all of us, we were made by devotees going out in the street and contacting us and giving us prasadam. We heard that Harinam Sankirtan, we got a book and we joined. Just like the other day, I was travelling with Dal Gauranga Prabhu. We drove down to Sydney we went to the Vivid Festival, Harinam Sankirtan, organised by Pratatna Prabhu and Jai Shri and other devotees. They're going out many nights a week for hundreds of thousands of people receiving the holy name. So we went down for a couple of nights at Harinam and distributing books. I went to my mother's 90th birthday as well. And on our way down, we drove through. We had to go the back way because it was flooded going down the highway. So we went through Armidale. We came to this little town, Glen Innes, and it was like about 7 o'clock at night. It was cold and dark, and we just had to use a bathroom. So we stopped at a service station, and we were wondering, why did Krishna make us miss the first two service stations? We somehow stopped at the third one, and we saw that it was Krishna's arrangement, because there was a little Indian lady there working in the service station with a little 4-year-old daughter. And we brought some books in to show her, and as soon as we gave her the Bhagavad Gita, she respectfully took her shoes off. Very pious lady. And she gave a big donation, and she took Bhagavad Gita and Ishupanasad and some Gaunitai happy dolls. And she said she's really struggling because her husband works away like 5 days a week in Coffs Harbour, so she's there by herself 5 days a week. And she says she's pregnant, and she said she doesn't know how she's going to survive, like coping with another child. So she said she actually was thinking to abort the child. She was lined up to abort the child with the hospital, and then on that day we arrived, she said, just before you came, I changed my mind. I decided to keep the child, and then the devotees turned up, and we turned up by Krishna's arrangement, and she got all the books. So she was like saying, this is wonderful, Krishna's arrangement that you've come here in this tiny little town where I'm living. So there's many people in these towns and villages. They're just waiting for the devotees to go there and meet them and give them some mercy. So we should, as much as possible, take the opportunity to go to all these cities and towns whenever we have time. Go out for an hour or two, preaching Krishna consciousness. Many devotees, you may have many other services you're doing on the farm, but we all have some time to go out and preach. Sometimes I ask devotees to come out from the farm, and they say, yes, Prabhu, I can only go to somewhere close. So we go to Mawilumbar. I've only got half an hour because I have to make it back for the Raj Bhog for the lunch. I remember in Sydney when I was down there in Sydney Temple, if we hung around for the lunch, the temple president, our Sankirtan leader, would get on our case. What are you doing? You're meant to be out there, like working for Krishna, preaching Krishna consciousness. You shouldn't be just back here eating the Mahaprasad. So we may have many excuses, but we can all find some time to preach Krishna consciousness. So as much as possible, think, how can we increase Krishna's family and create the good fortune of the lost souls out there, just like we somehow had our good fortune created, so much so that we can, in one lifetime, be fully Krishna conscious and go back to the spiritual world. This is the greatest opulence, to be fully engaged in Krishna's service and to achieve full Krishna prem, full love for Krishna, and always be in the state where we're always thinking of the glories of Krishna and his pure devotees, and thinking how to serve them and how to preach their glories. So let's try and create many other people's good fortune like this. And ultimately Prabhupada was saying this was the good fortune of Devahuti, that through her great devotee husband Kadamba Muni, she not only achieved an opportunity to be blessed with such good fortune of his mystic powers by living in this amazing palace, but she achieved the good fortune of becoming blessed to become a great devotee of the Lord and achieve the Lord as her own son. And her son was preaching, inspiring her in her own Krishna consciousness, because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we'll finish there. Does anyone have any questions or comments or corrections? Do we have a microphone available? Hare Krishna.
Thanks for the nice class. Could you please elaborate more on why Srimad Bhagavatam is solution to all material problems?
Well, it's like Prabhupada says, every word, every line, every page is full of transcendental power and purity and potency. So much so that even if people just touch these books or read one line or one word, they're eternally benefited. They're freed from more sins than they can commit in millions of lifetimes. Also, like we hear that when you chant Hare Krishna, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, you're freed from unlimited sinful activities. Bhagavatam says, Sankecham Parayasham Va, Stovam Helanam Eva Va, in the 6th canto in relationship to Ajamil, that even if one chants jokingly or for musical entertainment or derisively, he's freed from unlimited sinful reactions. So that's the potency of these transcendental literatures, the holy name, prasadam, association of devotees, worshipping the deity. So powerful. We may not be able to see or understand how that has effect, but we can understand there in our own lives because we've been immersed in this process, regularly having association of hearing this philosophy and pastimes and regularly chanting and serving, that we're experiencing ourselves how purifying it is, how we're becoming free from all sinful desires and materialistic tendencies, and we're perfecting our life by always being situated in Krishna conscious service, so we can understand that any other person, and they're all devotees of the Lord, anyone in this material world, even the lower living entities, like Haridas Thakur said, that even the immovable objects like the trees can be liberated and become Krishna conscious by hearing the loud chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So, and we have to have faith through realization. In like Srila Prabhupada said himself, these books can solve all the problems of the world. So we can see that practically. It's not just blind faith, but we can see how people's lives are being totally benefited and all their problems are being solved if they just take to hearing this philosophy and in the association of devotees. Would anyone else like to add any realization on? That's a good question. Thank you. Yes, Garanga Prabhu would like to say something.
I think just personally regarding that question, Arjuna was on the bodily conception and he was lamenting and whatnot due to his bodily conception and all of the material suffering, as Prabhupada refers to it as. The majority, if not all of it, is due to bodily conception. So by reading these books, especially Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna corrects Arjuna's bodily conception, that would stand to reason as to why it would solve the material suffering.
Yeah, very good answer. That by reading these literatures, we philosophically can become convinced, and practically we can become convinced that we're not this body, that we're an eternal soul. And just by acting constantly on the spiritual platform that we're an eternal soul, we're an eternal loving servant of Krishna, then automatically we can become free from so many miseries pertaining to the body or miseries pertaining to the mind. Of course, the material body naturally gets suffering and misery, especially in old age and disease, concomitant with this material body. But a devotee is not, if a devotee is fully fixed on the spiritual platform of being an eternal spirit soul, part and parcel of servant of Krishna, he won't be so affected by the material miseries pertaining to the body and the mind. He can, like Srila Prabhupada, even on his deathbed, he was still preaching Krishna consciousness, still translating the Srimad Bhagavatam. His consciousness was completely lucid, completely clear, completely Krishna conscious. So we can all come to this platform where we won't be affected by the miseries of this material world, we can rise above the miseries and still remain fully Krishna conscious amidst so many disturbances of this material world. So I think we'll finish there. It's time for Prasadam. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi.